Hello, my friends, and welcome back. So, first off, I want to apologize for the audio. I usually have my microphone on my desk, but I have my 3D printer running right now, and it was picking up a lot of that noise, so I opted to go with a headset instead. So, I apologize for the audio quality. I hope it's not too bad for you guys. But, anyways, let's get into the video. I was making a Kano deck to tinker and play around with because I've been having so much fun with Icelander. I wanted to see if anything's really changed with Kano. Um, I think for the most part, Kano's still going to play the same. I think you probably might want to run a couple of new cards like Aether Dart or something to deal with Drum-Eyes Dragons. But aside from that, I think it's pretty much the same deck. And that got me thinking whether you should or should not include some of the new cards and also existing cards. So there's two cards I want to talk about. One is a new card from Uprising, and one is an older card that I think is better now. Anyways, the the new card is Alluvion Constellas, which is the Wizard Legendary equipment from Uprising. I think it's a really good card. It's super great in Icelander. I mean, it's tried and tested at this point. I think basically, if you're going up against a Runeblade or a Wizard, probably you want to run this because the card advantage you get off of this is going to be a lot better than Tunic, only for Icelander, I think, because basically this is kind of a resource sink, so you're paying two resources into the arcane barrier to prevent 2 damage and then gain 3 resources at a later date, right? Well, honestly, for Icelander, I think Waning Moon is better than Kraken's Aether Vein at the moment, so it's really only an even trade 2 for 2. But that being said, that's a whole lot better for Icelander because you, like I said, are going to be using the Waning Moon or the Kraken's Aether Vein. I want to do some playtesting with Kraken's Aether Vein as well. I think this card is underrated, and I'll get to that in another video. But I was thinking, does Kano ever want to run the Alluvion Constellas? I don't think so. I still think Crucible of Aetherweave is the weapon to go to for Kano. I think it's tried and true. It's established in their playstyle. I don't think you would ever want to run Kraken's Aether Vein or Waning Moon or Aether Conduit, Lord forbid, in Kano because it's all about resources in Kano, right? It's a resource game. You can kind of think of it that all of your cards cost, well, other than the instants and the reactions, cost 3 additional, right? Because you're probably going to be playing them off the top of your library most of the time. So that's kind of what you want to do is you want to play these at instant speed. So Kano doesn't really have the resources to spare for a Waning Moon and Kraken's Aether Vein. Um, I think Alluvion Constellas with the Waning Moon might be okay, but I don't think it warrants taking up 2 whole slots for particular matchups where it might be good. Also, as Kano, you're probably not going to be playing on every turn, whereas I think with Icelander you probably are, because you're going to be playing a lot more like items and stuff like that. It's a lot easier because you can play 0 cost stuff as Icelander from Arsenal. There's a lot more room to kind of like play stuff for low resources and not have this massive resource sink. But anyways, Crucible of Aetherweave costs 1. So with you'll have to get 2 counters on Alluvion Constellas just to gain 1 resource back. And this is only when you're being dealt arcane damage. So Tunic is just always going to be better in my opinion for Kano, just because you're gaining 1 resource. I know it's 1 less counter, but it's not as reliable to get counters on it. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, you can double stack it. Also, with Tunic, you can use the resource for anything. One of the main things that you do with the Tunic resource counter is use it to pop Storm Striders. That's kind of like one of the go-to like core combos in Wizard. So yeah, I don't see a home for Alluvion Constellas in Kano. But if I'm missing something, please let me know. Have any of you guys playtested with Waning Moon or I mean Kraken's Aether Vein, either one in Kano? Did you have any fun? Did you have any luck with it? I don't think it's there. But other people might be saying, well, hey, it's an additional arcane barrier. My thing is, I think in Kano you're probably better off if you need Arcane Barrier 4. Because keep in mind, you have Storm Striders, which has Arcane Barrier 2. You have Metacarpus Node, which has Arcane Barrier 1, so that's already Arcane Barrier 3 if you have like a Crown of Providence and Tunic, or like Skullcap and Tunic, or whatever you choose your headpiece to be. Or, oh gosh, whatever it's called, the one that, Ragamuffins. I think Ragamuffins is pretty good in Kano as well. But, yeah, I think it's better to swap your headpiece for like a Nullrune hood, as opposed to swapping your tunic for the Constellas. But that's enough about that card. It went on and on about this card. It's basically, long story short, it's not that good. Also, if you're saying, well, maybe you can use it to pay for your frostbites, because it does say it makes your next staff ability cost 3 less, and you can stack it. You can do it more than once, so you can remove 4 counters to make it cost 6 less. Unfortunately, as far as the frostbites are concerned, the instant to remove the counters off of this is also taxed by the frostbites, which is the same thing for Tunic. If you've ever had to, if you were trying to use Tunic to pay for a frostbite, you can't, because, well, I mean, indirectly, yes, but basically, I mean, you can use this as an instant zero cost outlet to just pay a bunch, like pay to get rid of frostbites, pay a bunch into the robes to just remove the counters. I mean, you can do that, but you have Crucible of Aetherweave. You can just use that for one more at instant speed. I don't know. But the other card I wanted to talk about is Aetherize. So this is a card from Crucible of War. I have several copies. I'm not going to dig them out. I have a bunch of copies laying around because I thought this card would be really good going into Uprising as a meta. So I bought a bunch before the set came out, and I mean, I haven't checked the prices, but I think we got some more valid targets for Aetherize. Some really important ones that I wanted to touch on for you guys. So I kind of grabbed a couple of the instances that I thought were worth talking about from Uprising. Tome of Firebrand is probably, you're not going to see this card a whole lot, just because the 4 more Draconic Chain Links is a little bit hard to do for both Fi and Dromai. I think this card is good. I think it's really good. I just don't think that you're going to see it played a whole lot while you have the Aetherize in hand. But, I mean, canceling 2 cards, essentially you're costing them a resource, and then you're also costing them 2 cards, more or less, by playing Aetherize. I think that's a pretty good trade-off. Sand Cover is one that I think you'll probably see a lot more than Tome of Firebrand. The Ward 4 is pretty good. So if you have a bunch of damage coming at them at instant speed as a wizard, like 4 arcane damage or whatever, you can counter their sand cover. So if they're trying to blow up an Ash token and prevent 4 of that damage, you can say no and blow up this card, and then your damage will go through. So I think that's pretty good. Rewind. Rewind is pretty nasty. It's essentially the new version of Aetherize. This one targets non-attack actions, whereas Aetherize targets instants. But Rewind targets any non-attack action card, and it returns it to your hand. So you still get the card back, but you don't get the resources you spent into it back. If you popped a bunch of stuff to do it, like, so you popped a bunch of energy pots or whatever, all that's gone. It's pretty nasty. Rewind, I think Rewind is an interesting card. I'll have to kind of figure out all the use cases for it, and I'll probably make a video covering both Rewind and Aetherize in depth. But you can definitely Aetherize the Rewind. It might save you in a pinch every now and then. But the number 1 card that I think you're going to want to use Aetherize on is Oasis Respite. This card is awesome. I think this card is going to be very rampant in the meta, both in CC and in Blitz. It's just such a good card, right? I think a lot of people underestimate this card as well. So one thing that's pretty cool about this is it says prevent the next 4 damage that would be dealt to target hero. So first off, target hero, which means you can target another hero aside from yourself, which is good for the upcoming PvE. It's good for Ultimate Pit Fight, basically any multiplayer format you might be doing. But it also says by a source of your choice. So a source means if something is doing hybrid damage, or something like that, it would prevent both instances of the damage. So, like Chain Lightning, it says deal 2 and then deal 2. The source is the card. There are 2 instances of damage, which is the 2 and the 2, right? So most of the time when it says, when you like pay to block something, so like you can't uh, you can't use Arcane Barrier 3. Like if you have Skullcap active and you pay 3 into Arcane Barrier 3, it would pay 2 for one, but the other floating wouldn't go into the other one. Whereas Oasis Respite, because the source for both of those instances are the same card, it would cover both instances. And then if you have less life, you gain a life. This card is just nuts. This is good. This is good in any control strategy. I've thought about even putting this in my Icelander deck. I don't know. I don't know what we would cut for it. I mean, it's really strong, but it's more of like a stalling tactic or like a catch-up tactic. So I don't know. But this card, you're going to see a lot of this card. And as a wizard, you're probably going to want to get rid of it, right? Because if you need this damage to go through, it's also with Aetherize, it's a surprise factor, right? They're not expecting you to be able to get around it. So it's kind of like, you can kind of think of Aetherize as like an attack reaction, basically like a route for your arcane damage, if you want to think of it that way, right? Because you can blow up Sand Cover or Oasis Respite, any of these instants that mitigate damage, you can blow that up and they'll be like, oh my gosh, and they won't expect it. So you can push that damage over for like an Aether Wildfire or something to like stack that damage. I just think that the Oasis Respite is going to be a really good target for Aetherize. The other card I had up here was just Asvoli. I wanted to point out that, so if you're playing Oasis Respite against Asvoli or anything else that has hybrid damage or multiple instances of damage, so the source for the damage is still Asvoli, but Oasis Respite says the damage has to be dealt to target hero. So Asvoli will come in for 2 regular damage and then 2 instances of, or up to 2 instances of 1 arcane damage. If they choose you for 1 instance of arcane damage, so it'd be essentially 2 like actual damage and then 1 arcane damage coming at you, Oasis Respite would cover all 3 of those. But if they choose like one of your Aether Ashwings to get the other instance of arcane damage, it wouldn't cover that because it's not being dealt to target hero, if that makes sense. So it's just a clarification I wanted to bring up as far as the hybrid damage on Oasis Respite. But that's the video. I just wanted to talk about those 2 cards real quick. I'm sorry it's a little long-winded. I always get so like pumped up to talk about this stuff, right? It's like simple card or video idea. I want to make a video on it and not talk about dumb stuff. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate you watching. If there's any other classes, cards, combos, matchups, anything you want me to talk about, if you're a new player and you want to know certain things about how the game runs, feel free to ask. I can make a video covering all that for you if you want. Yeah, aside from that, I'm up to like 21 subscribers right now, which is amazing. And I got a whole lot of views on my Icelander videos. So I really appreciate your views and your subscriptions and your time. I don't know. That's it for me. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you again next time.